All right, so I want to welcome everyone. My name is Lee Moore-Elman. I'm the Director of Engagement for Families with Young Children at the Partnership for Jewish Learning and Life. We're really excited to share Ilyse Shainbrown with you tonight. Ilyse will talk to you about her background and expertise in a couple of minutes. I want to tell you a little bit about what the Partnership for Jewish Learning and Life does. We are the identity building organization in Greater Metro West. My role is to empower families to do more Jewishly, to help families chart their Jewish journeys. In conjunction with PJ Library, we create experiences for families to do more Jewishly in whatever way they want to. We have 3 family connectors who work within our community in West Orange, Livingston, Maplewood, South Orange, and in the Rockaway area, to help families do more Jewishly in their homes, find Jewish friends for them, connect them to resources within their community. Deborah Weissletter, our family connector in West Orange, Livingston, is instrumental in bringing us Ilyse Shainbrown tonight. This is the first session in our 2-part program, How to Speak with Your Children About the Holocaust, featuring Ilyse Shainbrown. The second session will be in person with Ilyse for a facilitated discussion about the same topic, taking place at the JCC Metro West on Tuesday, April 14th from 10 to 11 a.m. So if you know of people who could not attend tonight, we hope to see them in person on Tuesday. So again, I've muted everybody's phones, and the format for today's session, we've asked for your questions in advance of today's session. So and we received many, so thank you all for your interesting questions. I'll be asking Ilyse questions that you've submitted, and she'll answer them. If your questions, you still have questions at the end of this session, please type them into the chat feature. And hopefully at the end, Ilyse will have time and she'll answer those. So again, this session is being recorded and it will be posted online, and we'll make sure to get you that information afterwards. So we're going to start. So Ilyse, I'm going to start just by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us about your background.
Great. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time tonight to participate. I know that talking about the Holocaust is not easy to do for adults. It's certainly not easy for adults to do with their children. Even myself, I'm a mom of 3 young boys. It's not even easy for me. Sometimes I don't have an easy time talking about it. In my former life, before I was a mom, I was a middle school and high school social studies teacher. And then after my youngest was born, I went back to school, and I am now finishing up another master's in Holocaust and Genocide Studies. My specific research focuses on different nations' reactions to the Holocaust, specifically France, Denmark, and Poland, and also on youth and adolescents during periods of genocide and the Holocaust. So I focus specifically on looking at children and youth coming of age during Holocaust and genocide.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ilyse. So we're very excited to have Ilyse here, and welcome everyone. Welcome to all of the new callers. Again, the format of today's session is that I'm going to ask Ilyse questions that many of you have submitted in advance of today's session, and she'll respond to them. And if you have additional questions towards the end of our session, which is 9 o'clock, please use the chat feature to indicate those questions. So Ilyse, what is the best age to start talking about the Holocaust with your children?
I think, as any parenting decision, this is specific to each child and each family. However, by elementary school, all children, especially all Jewish children, should know that there was a Holocaust. They should know that there was a time that there were people called Nazis that came. They were out to destroy the Jewish people, and that it was a period of hardship for our people. By that point, they are going to hear about it. They're going to hear about it from their friends. They're going to hear about it from their peers. They're going to hear about it in school. And for me and my beliefs and my research and all of my studies shows that when children do not know about it before, it becomes even harder for them to know and understand it. So by first, second grade, your children should know that there was a Holocaust.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how do you know if your children are ready for a conversation? Is it something they say or some way they behave?
It might be that they might ask. Many children do. And certainly my children have asked specific questions at different times related to something they've heard. It may also be that some things have come up in your house about persecution or tolerance or treating other people differently. This is a topic that doesn't just relate to a point in history. It relates to how we treat others, how we care for others, how other children are different. So once your children are open to that conversation and are having those conversations, that's the right time, especially if they have somewhat of an understanding of death and dying. They will know about it and they will understand it. I don't know if there's anything they specifically might do, but definitely they might ask and know about it and be able to question it. And if they're seeing, certainly still today, there are survivors out there, some children might meet them and see them and they may have questions related to that. And that is a fantastic opportunity to open up this conversation to them.
Wonderful, thanks. And so how do you open up the conversation? How do you start speaking with your children about this topic?
Well, this is kind of a two-parter. If your children have come to you with questions, then you go forward and take their lead with their questions. And we can go back to that in a second. If they haven't come to you and you want to speak to them, one of the reasons we were doing this week is that Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, is Wednesday night to Thursday. This is a perfect opportunity. What we do in our family, what I know we stress with a lot of people in my program and research at the Holocaust Resource Center is light a yurtzeit candle Wednesday night. Say a very small prayer for the 6 million that perished at the hands of the Nazis. Read a book. Books are fantastic, and there are many fabulous Holocaust books out there. Children's books, two of my favorites are Promise of a New Spring by Gerda Weissman-Klein and Terrible Things by Eve Bunting. They use animals to tell the story, which is great for young kids. They really relate. My children have heard that book before. I've read it to children before. They understand and they accept it. These books talk about tolerance. They talk about survival. They talk about rebuilding and rebirth. They do not focus on death and dying. And that is where the children will relate and understand. Moving forward after that, there are some fantastic chapter books all about survival. I Survived the Nazi Invasion, Number the Stars, When Hitler Stole the Pink Rabbit. In all of these books, the protagonist survives the Holocaust. That is key in the beginning. Talk about that. Draw into what they know. Draw into coming out of it. Many people used to believe you introduced the Holocaust with Anne Frank. One of the things that I stress in my dissertation is youth and adolescents going beyond Anne Frank. Anne Frank is tough because she does not survive. So that is a very harsh story for children to start with. It has to come because obviously many don't survive, but that is not a great place to start with them. That's something that should come further on, later. Talk about those stories about what we've gained after the Holocaust as opposed to focusing on the destruction. Then, as your children get a little more comfortable and a little bit older, move forward and say, well, we know that we've talked about 6 million died. 6 million is a huge number, which there's also a great book about that, which I can get to later on, about a school that collected 6 million paper clips and to show the 6 million. And that, then move on to that. Then say, how did this happen? What did they do? But first, start more gently. It's very important with kids that they know and understand that, and that they also know you're doing this for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, so why talk about the Holocaust? I mean, you could just talk about, somebody in your family who died. The Holocaust is so heavy.
It is, and that's kind of the next question where we were coming from before, is why is it important to talk to your children about the Holocaust? Well, the fact is the Holocaust is such a part of what happened in recent Jewish history, but also in world history, and it so much relates to today. And sadly, we have genocide today, many other genocides today. We also have anti-Semitism today, just Just this week, a friend of mine in Maryland told me about her own synagogue in suburban Maryland that was defaced with swastikas. And that was this week, and the place where her kids see it and know it, and these are sadly conversations we have to have. Another reason, we all know history does repeat itself, and there are issues. We are also facing in the Holocaust and Genocide world, we're facing another major anniversary, the 100th year of the Armenian Genocide. That was a time during World War I where 1 million Armenians were murdered. Many evidence, we have lots of evidence and lots of conversations where Hitler pointed to the Armenian Genocide and said, nobody cared that they killed 1 million, they're not going to care that we kill the Jews either. And certainly if maybe somebody cared, if people spoke about it and people talked about it, the world would do something. And even since the Holocaust, we have had genocides. And when we say never forget, we say never forget so that we know as a people that it's not just about us, it's about others. And it's about making sure that others are safe so that no people experiences what Jews people. So I think for kids, you need to understand it as a two-part thing. One is it's a Jewish piece, and the other is that it's a world piece. And they, as young Jews going forward into the world, they need to understand and know about that.
Mm-hmm. And somebody wrote that she directs a school, a religious school, and that there are parents who are really afraid for their children to learn about the Holocaust. And so how do you, if you're a teacher in a school, how do you assuage parents' fears?
I understand that. I understand that as a parent, and I understand that as a teacher. Number one, I think it's really important to bring parents into the conversation first. Don't just show something or read something or tell the children something. Talk to the parents. Have a meeting with parents. That's something I'm starting to do at synagogues in the entire area. I'm trying to meet with parents beforehand so that we can say, this is in the curriculum, this is coming up, this is what we will be doing, so that there's preparation at home. I think as parents in my generation, people in their 30s and 40s now, the Holocaust was so much further from us that for the first time we have to tell our kids. Before, people just knew. We just knew. It was in our world. There were so many survivors here. Our parents, our grandparents all remembered these things. Now we have to, and we're scared to, because 40 years from when I was a kid was very much real. 70 years is another lifetime. To our children, the Holocaust was in a different lifetime. So when you're talking to parents, you have to say, we need our kids to know and understand this. And yes, it might be scary, but we're going to work with you. We're going to work together. And there are stories. There are ways to do it. There are methods. Anybody, I have my email up there. Email me, talk to me. I'm happy to come speak to you. I'm also happy for you to look at book lists that I have and things like that. It's very important for these kids to know and understand that, and these parents to know and understand that without being afraid of it.
Great. So Amy Dorsch just wrote, how much detail do you share without kids being afraid of Nazis coming after them or someone trying to do something to them because they are Jewish? How can we teach kids about this and not have them afraid to be Jewish?
That's a great question, and it's a really interesting question, and something that just recently my own kids asked me after Paris and Copenhagen. And because those were incidents, real life incidents that happened because people were Jewish. I think you need to calm your children like anything else and say that this is not happening now. There are no Nazis now. Are there people that still don't like Jews? Yes. But what is important is that we and most of society are showing and working together that those people are not going to ever win out again. They are not knocking on your door. They will not be coming, and you won't not be having to be hidden away. So I think that that's really important to remember. I know for myself when this happens in my family, my middle child is very anxious, and we recognized that it was bad, but we calmed him by saying, we are going to do everything to keep you safe, just like everything else. Mommy and Daddy are keeping you safe. But if we don't know that these things happen, if we shy away from talking about them, that's where fear builds. And we need to, as Jews, make sure that people know these things are not okay. They're not okay to ever happen to us or to anyone else.
Thank you. So what about the question, hey, Mom, I've heard that 6 million Jews were killed a long time ago. How could that have happened? Why didn't anyone stop that from happening?
Okay, that's a great question. One of my favorite things in my research, and one of the things I talk about all the time when I talk to different groups, is a lot of people always say, one survivor once said, a lot of people always say, where was God? Where was God? And he said, I'm tired of hearing that. I want to hear, where was man? And that's really what you have to go with your children. And you have to say, you know, there were a lot of things going on in the world then. And depending on how old your child is, you can say, there were effects from World War I. People in Germany were not doing well. People were not thriving. They were looking for somebody to listen to and somebody to believe in. It wasn't necessarily about anti-Semitism. It was about making their lives better. And so when Hitler came around, it was not just Hitler. It was a time where everyone sort of wanted to feel better, and Hitler made them feel better. And that if other people had spoken and other people had said, you know, this is wrong, this is not okay, this may not have ever happened. However, people were not worried about others. They were worried about themselves. And that is also another piece to draw in to why we learn about this, so that we know that we need to worry about the world, that we need to worry about other people. We don't just look at ourselves. Too many people during the Nazi period looked at themselves and they wanted to know what was better for them. Yes, it was very scary to speak out about the Nazis, but many did. And that's another big piece to talk to about your children. I love to read stories and talk to kids about those that did help. There were many, many people. We call them righteous Gentiles, although there were some of every faith. There's a fantastic picture book about a mosque in Paris that saved its Jews, that helped the Jews of Paris to survive. That's a great book to bring into the world today with our current conflict, to read to our kids and to tell them that they should be, you know, they can help. Other people helped, and there will be help.
Great. Thank you. And so the other question is, you know, hey, Dad, why did everyone hate the Jews so much? I heard it's because they were rich.
That's an interesting question, and that's a good time to talk about stereotypes, especially with elementary school children that learn a lot about, at least in the public school system, and I would imagine in most day schools and yeshivas, learn a lot about problems in our own country with the Civil War and with racism. We talk a lot about that. So bring up stereotypes. Where do stereotypes come from? Why do people believe that? Well, the stereotype, depending on how much you want to get involved, really stemmed from the fact that Jews had to be tax collectors in some places. They needed to take the money because they could take money on Sunday when non-Jews could not. So that was really where that stereotype began. And it sort of fed off one thing from another. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of people at that time were economically having a hard time, so it was easy to blame the Jews. It wasn't true. It wasn't certainly the case that all Jews were rich. So I do think that you can use this as a great conversation on stereotypes, and also use it as a way of explaining that it came from somewhere, but it was not necessarily what was the reality. And also you can say that they hated the Jews just because they were different. And that's okay, that we recognize that being different led to hatred. It's okay to say that to your children.
Mm-hmm. And I've also, Mom, heard that people still hate Jews. Do people still want to kill Jews today?
That's another difficult question. Unfortunately, yes, between us. I don't know that that's a good way to answer your children. If I were answering my own children, I would say there are people out there that are still anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism was something that existed before the Holocaust, and it's sadly something that exists after the Holocaust. Most organized groups, most countries are not out to hate Jews. Certainly here in the United States it's not, in other places it's not, and we are going to do everything we can so that people do not hate Jews. And you need to be strong in who you are to explaining that to people, that just because you believe something different doesn't mean that you're wrong. And you also have to accept that in other people. When other people believe something different, you have to be tolerant of them. That the only way we're going to stop this hatred is if we don't hate, and we don't teach our children to hate. Right now, interestingly enough, we have a German au pair living in our house, and that has been a blessing for my family. It's something that has taught my children that we don't hate. We don't hate Germans. We don't hate anybody. We don't hold a grudge. Her family is wonderful. Both her parents have been here to visit, and we don't ever speak of that in our home. And that is what we'll teach these kids, without saying, yes, some people want to kill Jews, because that's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. So, Mom, I shouldn't be scared, because it sounds like an evil man could just do this again, so I guess I shouldn't be scared.
You should not be scared. An evil man, no Hitler will come about again. The world will make sure that no Hitler will come about again. It's not something you should be frightened about. It's not something that you should think about. It's something that you should understand happened so that it doesn't happen again. As your children get older, though, you need to alter that message a little bit.
Right.
And certainly by middle school and high school, when children go off and they're going on to these college campuses where anti-Semitism is rampant now. I don't know everybody calling in how old your children are, how close your children are to this, but that is the time that you need to really empower your children to say, you need to speak up. Because if you don't speak up, it could get very bad. But that is not a conversation you have till the teen to post-teen years. That is not a child conversation to have. Children have to have the background to lead up to that conversation. I mean, my own children still do not even know how, even my 9-year-old, who's a very inquisitive 9-year-old, he does not know about a gas chamber. He does not know how they were murdered. He does not know those kinds of details. But at some point, as we work up in the next few years, he will. But he has a really strong background first. And I think that is the key, is that there are levels to this. And the last thing you want is come high school to walk in and show Schindler's List and suddenly your kid knows about the Holocaust. You want your children to know in pieces before. I Never Saw Another Butterfly is a fantastic collection of poems that were written by children in Theresienstadt. It's fantastic. Look at those poems with them. They're just poems. Some of them are not even about death, dying, nothing. They're about butterflies and kicking soccer balls. And that's a great thing. Another program we're starting for those of you that have children getting towards bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah age, is to twin with somebody who perished in the Holocaust, so that your children connect with one person, one child, that if your child likes to paint, maybe that child likes to paint. Or if your child likes to play soccer, that child might have liked to play soccer. Just to make a connection. If your child is one of 3 girls, that child could be one of 3 girls. Something simple that connects them, that gives them a piece, so that eventually when they do ask that loaded question when they're 14, 15, 16 years old, what if this happens? You say, well, it could, and you've got to speak out. And that's why we've educated you up until this point, so that you can speak out.
Wonderful, thank you. And Stacy David just asked the question on chat, what age do you recommend that children attend a Holocaust Remembrance service in their school?
Great question. I think by middle elementary school is perfectly acceptable. Next Sunday night, I'm actually speaking at a Holocaust Remembrance service at Temple Beth Shalom in Livingston. It is open to the public, and I am bringing my own children. It is going to be very geared towards families. It's also something Limor and I have discussed possibly doing next year, pulling something together in our own community where it is geared towards families. I would do research first and make sure nothing is being spoken about that is not appropriate. but I do think a remembrance service is completely fine for elementary school age children, as long as you know what they're saying and what they're presenting.
Wonderful. And others are asking for a list of recommended books. And I will tell you that if you give us your email, and let me give you my contact information. It is L, like Lee Moore, and my last name Ellman, ELLMAN, L. Ellman at thepartnershipnj.org. Once again, LELLMAN at the, THE, partnership, PARTNERSHIP, NJ.org. If you send me your email or if you registered for this session, then we likely have your email address. We'd be happy to send you a list of recommended books that Ilyse put together.
I just put up my email. I have some books, another great list, so you have my email. I also have some talking points I could email to all of you. Another great list is at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, puts out a fantastic list. Their recommended age, I should have said this to begin with, is 11 to visit the museum. And I think that you can give or take a year or so there depending on your child. We have not taken our oldest. We plan to take him at 10 only because he's much more involved in this topic because of me. So he has a little less than a year to go. He's anxiously waiting his visit. But their recommendation is 11, so that you know that. That's the age they put it at.
Thank you. So any last questions, please indicate them in the chat section. I do have another question, which is, so how do you explain a death chamber or a concentration camp or other, terrible atrocities?
Okay. Ghettos are actually acceptable at a young age because ghettos were a part of Jewish history always, sadly. Some on choice, some not. So ghettos are really okay. In terms of concentration camps and gas chambers, I would not talk about them until they are older and until you have to. Like 11, 12, 13, those ages. And when kids come to you and ask, you say after the ghettos, it wasn't working enough for the Nazis and they wanted something called the final solution. And the final solution was to kill the Jews of Europe. And they did that by then sending Jews to concentration camps or killing centers. And as calmly as possible, you explain that they were told to take a shower, and instead of water came gas. And that is what killed a good portion of the Jews. It is not actually what killed most, but it is what killed a good portion. We have a lot that were killed in pits, other things, of course. I think it's really important to not answer that question and not speak about that until you really have to, when children are older and have somewhat more of an understanding. And again, explain that that is something the world knows about now, and it's something that we would never allow to happen again. It's something we work really hard to not allow to happen again.
Great
question, though.
That's a really hard one. Thank you. All right. Any last questions? We'd be happy to take them. And so I've indicated my phone number and my email address, and Ilyse has as well. So again, Lee Moore, Ellman. That's L. Ellman at thepartnershipnj.org. And my phone number in my office is 973-929-2979. So it's 9 o'clock. We're going to end, but I just want to thank Ilyse Shainbrown so much. I think this was great.
And thank you for listening in. It's really important, and I hope it's some way you recognize Yom HaShoah with your children, with your families this week. It's really so important.
Great, yes. And Yom HaShoah begins on Wednesday night, the 15th, and goes till Thursday night, the 16th this week. And so again, this is the first of the two-part series, How Will You Speak with Your Children About the Holocaust, featuring Ilyse Shainbrown. The second session takes place at the JCC Metro West on Tuesday morning, this coming Tuesday morning, April 14th, from 10 to 11 a.m. For more information about the work that the partnership does, we have 3 family connectors in various communities who can help you chart your Jewish journeys, as well as many, many other wonderful programs, PJ Library, programs for children as well as teens. Please visit our website, which is www.thepartnershipnj.org. For more information, you may also join us on Facebook. We have several groups. We have PJ Library Metro West, which is one page, as well as Jewish Parents Connecting in Essex County, Jewish Parents Connecting in Morris County, and Jewish Parents Connecting in Union and Somerset counties. So please join us on Facebook. Again, I want to thank Deborah Weissletter for connecting us to Ilyse Shainbrown. Deborah is a family connector with the partnership. And again, this session is being recorded, so if you only got to the last second or two, we'll be sure to get you the recording. Please send me an email